Good evening, everyone. Nick Sweeney from Sweeney Architects here. Many thanks to Mairead for inviting us to be part of the webinar this evening. We thought we'd go through a few slides of some of the grant-aided projects that we've been involved in the Longford area over the last number of years. Okay, St. Catchins Church in Curry. This was one of the earliest projects that we were involved in. I think it started with a Structures at Risk grant back around about 2009, 2010 to repair the main roof and the upper roof on the bell tower. Peter Mulligan was the contractor on this. We returned after about 2 years. We applied for a grant for the repair of the stained glass windows. So there's two nationally important Ethelrind memorial windows, as well as a large stained glass altar window. So the repairs in the altar window that progressed over several years. So there was internal plastering, which was on a separate grant, and there was repair of the stone hood externally, all of which had moved slightly. So it took several grants to resolve all the issues. I think in 2019 there was a grant to repair the internal plasterwork around the altar area, and there was also some further work on the timber floors in the stalls and some of the wainscoting as well. Okay, the Ulster Bank in Main Street in Longford. Now, this wasn't a grant-aided project. It was funded by the client, which was RBS. I think this was about 2 or 3 years ago. But what was interesting about the project was researching the original layout and the alterations that had happened over the years. So there was a Section 57 application outlining the works. So the client selected some of the works to be carried out at that time. The particular issue was the staining on the fine limestone facade. The staining was due to minor movements and cracks in the stonework and so on. So we did a bit of research on consolidants and putting around windows, stone repair, and then there was also specifications issued for the lead work on the roof. So the old RIC Barracks in Ballinamuck, again, Peter Mulligan was the contractor, and we repaired the main roof, the chimneys and the caps, and we looked at that smaller bay at the front. Rather than using ridge tiles, we used a slate detail because it was closer to eye level. I suppose the particular interest in that building was it was originally a hipped building with turret at the front. But I mean, it had been altered over the years. The gables were formed in early concrete, so we used consolidants and readable paint to overcome the porosity and try and keep the damp out. Okay, the guards house in Connolly Barracks in Longford. This was a project that was granted directly by Longford County Council. It was also funded by the EDI. So this was back in 2013 when the EDI were running a conservation course. So the students were involved in the restoration works, and it was one of the first buildings in the barracks to be restored. So it was quite a comprehensive restoration. There was asbestos slates on site. The roofs were originally slightly different levels because they were built in several phases. So part of the challenge was to try and marry the roof. We removed some of the internal walls to provide for future use for the building, and there was some lead work done to the existing timber vents that were on the roof at the time. And also the windows were repaired, doors were repaired, and there was some stonework done internally. We were involved back in, I think it was about 2015. It was a Heritage Council grant, but it's an example of a community project. So we did some research on the tower house that was there. Dr. Kieran O'Connor, who's an archaeologist from Galway with a particular interest in castles, he gave us some advice on the potential reconstruction of the castle. We also identified some other projects, an old mill, and a boathouse, provided some direction for future projects for the committee. Okay, so the greenhouse or the hothouse in Strokestown House in Roscommon is one of the projects that we're currently working at. Kieran Compton is the main contractor and Joe McEnroe is the joiner. So it's a very interesting project for us. It's one of these early greenhouses. This one originally dated from around the 1780s and is reputedly one of the oldest greenhouses in Ireland. James Donnell was the architect. It was restored about 10, 12 years ago, but it hasn't lasted very well. So we're paying particular attention to the detailing, recording the historical layout, and trying to improve the detailing where we can. Okay, Kilglass House in Legan. I know Charles and Ronan are talking as part of the webinar, so I thought I'd just present some of the photographs of the project. This is one of those projects which has had various grants over the years. The house has spent a lot of time being surrounded in scaffolding. I suppose with the earliest project was conservation works on the front facade, where the porch, a later porch, was rearranged, and we reinstated the original, as close to the original as possible, of the entrance and the steps. I suppose the project after that was the rear return. The stair window had been closed in with various toilet returns, so the returns were reduced to reintroduce the stairwell. The roof was repaired then as a further grant project, and the chimneys were also repaired and lined. The drainage on the house was quite interesting in that there was a spring which had been diverted into the kitchen, so that was affecting damp coming up through the house. That was rediverted, and a feature well was we found the outline of an old historical well on the site. So diverting the drainage away from the house, and we dug out at the basement level, and drainage pipes going to lower ground, which had a profound effect on the house. The plastering externally was done in 3 phases, so it was over several years. The lime render was added to the house. The contractors involved were Charlie Stewart and Kieran Horrican.